Sunrise ascertains itself and a new cold autumn day begins. Shepherd has plenty of time to take his herd of sheep to graze in mountain grasslands before snowing of first snowflakes. Autumn and winter grazing causes sheep's wool to be longer, brighter, and stronger. Spring collected wool is the best for making carpet skeins. Such wool is woven first, then dyed elegantly in an array of beautiful colors by masters of dyeing. Remaining arts of ancient cavemen, particularly diversely shaped drawings and paintings on the walls of many caves, are testimonials to man's long knowledge of dyes and dyeing practices. Many researchers based on early historical writings have indicated that ancient Persian civilization were quite familiar with dyeing materials and exploited them to the fullest in dyeing wool and silk since 2000 BC. This is a pool at the end point of an underground qanat chain flowing beneath low-altitude mountains of Kohistan at the eastern borderlands in Iran. Ustad Hussein Qurbani, a master weaver, has managed one of the few remaining mud carpet manufacturing workshops in Asiaban village and has dyed wool skeins with raw materials for the past half-century. Today, he and his assistant have agreed to dye few wool skeins for us in the traditional fashion. Although his way of dyeing seems simple, but it is very meticulous, laborious, and requires accurate timing. There have been times in which many dyeing masters used to break thick surface ice in pools, springs, and streams in order to access clear and high-quality fresh water, says Ustad Qurbani, though he adds, the best time of dyeing is in spring. Apparently, he is a little bit worried about the cold autumn breeze that has just started to blow. Skein washing is the first and the foremost task. Woolen skeins are washed out with clear fresh water and soap powder. Washing removes fats and other impurities from wool. He ties the skeins with a few cotton threads to prevent the skeins from falling apart in the dyeing pot. Then, wool is placed aside until its soap residues drain out completely. He hangs the skeins from nails pounded on a dry tree beside the pool. If by any chance there comes a time when wool skeins are fully dried, then before dyeing process they are wetted again. In many parts of the country, wool skeins are pre-soaked in clear fresh water for 2 to 3 hours. For the next step and following washing of wool skeins, mordering takes place. Mordering is a word taken from Latin that literally means biting or indentation. However, it is used here to reflect the action of chemical treatment of wool skeins with metallic salts for obtaining a more stable and durable dyeing product. Quantity of mordant is an important and determining factor to keep in mind, often depending on the primary dye and the final color intensity of choice. A portion of mordant equal to about 5 to 25% of dry weight of wool skein is applied. The best and the most famous mordant is a white vitriol chemically known as the aluminum potassium sulfate. Ustad Qurbani dissolves known amount of the white vitriol, as he calls it, zome, in lukewarm water at about 40 degrees Celsius, at which time he soaks woolen skein in the solution. He uses this mordant with madder dye and fresh walnut fruit peel. These skeins are soaked for 1 to 2 hours in boiling water containing dissolved mordant. In other parts of Iran, instead of boiling for a short period of time, soaking process is carried out overnight, about 12 hours, in lukewarm water containing dissolved mordant. At all times of mordant treatment, wool skeins are stirred with wooden sticks until coloration is homogeneous. Ustad Qurbani uses dried grapevine leaves and white vitriol together. He smashes leaves and adds them to the boiling cauldron. Grapevine leaves dye skeins with a lightly colored yellowish undercoating. This instead enables him to use such a wool piece in the carpet as a light yellow colored background without having to apply other dyes. Ustad Qurbani utters religious poems while working and starts each stage of his work in the name of God. Skeins are removed from boiling treatment cauldrons after adequate exposure. He squeezes skeins and shakes them off well to remove grapevine leaf pieces. Later, he hangs skeins for a while and waits until partial draining out takes place in ambient air. fibers are washed out again after mordant application to remove residuals and remaining acid compounds. This is usually carried out along a stream of flowing water whereby fibers are submerged for 12 to 24 hours. But then again, Ustad Qurbani believes that fibers must be shaken off quite well before submerging. This laborious process, however, has been replaced in many traditional dyeing practices by a process that involves regular washing and submerging of skeins in rapidly flowing water. He wets skeins in flowing water and pounds each of them against a smooth rock, so-called skein washing rock 80 times, 40 times on each side of skein and 10 times for each section around it. Such an enduring task must be applied to each and every skein. Nowadays, pounding is applied via striking of a wooden stick in many places, but Ustad Qurbani, at the age of 70 years old, still strikes skeins repeatedly and vigorously as if he were on his youth. Another day begins. Now fibers that were treated yesterday are ready for the next phase of dyeing process. Here again, technique of the work varies depending on raw material to be used for dyeing. Ustad Qurbani wants to make a so-called gul anar or pomegranate flower coloration, a bright red dye. Thus, he adds madder root powder, which amounts to as much as 30% of the weight of dry wool skeins he wants to dye to fibers. He places fibers in cold water inside dyeing cauldrons and spirts a mixture of madder root powder on them thoroughly. After complete soaking of fibers in water, he caps the cauldron and awaits overnight till the next morning. During this time, madder root powder absorbs water, as Ustad Qurbani calls it, saturates and becomes ready for heating. Ustad Qurbani spends rest of his day on dyeing with walnut fruit peel. He prefers to combine mordant treatment and dyeing phases into one phase.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ya Rahmanu, Ya Rahim.
He pounds walnut fruit peel into a powder, sifts thoroughly and mixes it with white vitriol and grapevine leaves in solution. Then he heats fibers in boiling solution for 1.5 hours. If darker intensities of color are desired, then The heating time may be increased to 2 or 2.5 hours. Yet, addition of sumac or other dyes and even using fibers dyed with indigo in boiling phase would produce darker and black spectrum of colors.
الله الرحمن الرحیم یا رحمان یا رحیم. اول سلام به احمد، دوم به ساقی کوثر، سوم به فاطمه، چهارم به صبر پوش پیامبر. سلام پنجم من بر شهید نیزه و خنجر.
Fibers soaked in water containing madder root powder will remain inside cauldron beside the stream overnight. Work restarts at the onset of the next morning. Fire is torched under the cauldron and fibers are boiled for a period of 1.5 hours, with periodic stirring to minimize settling of insoluble madder root powder. It is most important that fire flames raise the temperature of mixture to boiling in about 30 minutes. This accommodates homogeneous dyeing of fibers. Dyeing procedure for indigo, however, is different to some degree. It includes incorporation of reducing chemicals such as hydrosulfides and a basic compounds such as caustic soda or ammonia in the solution. Wool fibers are heated in 60 degrees Celsius water for about 1 to 2 hours, depending on the desired color intensity. The more time of soaking leads to a more darker color intensity. Cooling air forces Ustad Qurbani to cover his face with his sash. Wet heated and green colored fibers are removed and are exposed to ambient air. Gradually, green color of fibers transforms to a very attractive blue. Repeating this procedure yields a spectrum of darker blue color intensities. Later, he takes skeins out of cauldron, spirits them to drain out, and puts them through final washing phase. Again, each skein is pounded against skein washing rock 80 times as described earlier and is placed in flowing water for 12 hours afterwards. Next, he hangs skeins facing sun to facilitate drying process and repositions them inversely at specific periods to allow even drying at all sides. Placing fibers in water current and exposing them to sunshine not only improves brightness of their colors, but also stabilizes dye more effectively against washing and sun rays. Dyes extracted from raw materials via application of natural dyeing procedures have their peculiarities and manifest themselves very attractively. Now wool skeins are ready to be woven into wrap and woof of carpet. Fibers will be blended in an exquisite and precious carpet displaying its array of brilliant colors without fading throughout many years to follow. Such a magnificent carpet that is made up of natural raw materials and its dyes are also natural undoubtedly suits well with any lifestyle and decorates any room without undue concerns and risks for environment and humans. So long as chemical dyes had not been exploited extensively, people relied upon masters of dyeing to prepare a diversity of dyes for their particular use in carpets, fabrics, ceramics, and other colorful objects. This perhaps explains the reason for observing secrecy in transferring of dyeing knowledge from one generation to the next generation of dyers through word of mouth without disclosing its mastering details. Having such a valuable and secret knowledge always granted masters of dyeing a special social ranking and brought them admiration of artists, professionals, and even royalties, a fact that is almost forgotten today. Surely it would not be long before man returns to its sensible natural being and embraces nature again.